Good morning and welcome to this week's episode of Iconic Freedom, The Formula. Here we set a standard for accountability and responsibility, the ownership of your choices and your outcomes and everything that follows. Let each care for self and all will be cared for. So when I talk about the formula, we talk about that periodic chart that you see on the various websites that this is posted on, where you create those elements that come together and bring harmony to your life. And if one of those elements in your life is not working, then you extract it and you reevaluate it and, again, bring that harmony to your life. So last week, we talked about silence as power, your own, basically, not as punishment or withdrawal and, playing shenanigans, but silence as the moment explanation ends. You're no longer explaining yourself. You sit in your integrity and your character. Today, I want to talk about what comes after that. Because when you stop explaining, something in a way kind of rushes in. The silence doesn't arrive in a sense empty. It arrives in many ways like a vacuum, and the mind hates a vacuum, right? When explanation disappears, the first thing most people noticed is not peace from within, it's exposure. And this is what I would say is a normal step in this progression. Thoughts will rush in a sense, to fill the space because, old habits die hard, right? They start to surface. Maybe old conversations start to replay themselves in your head over and over again. Moments that you could have clarified something, right? Things you worry were misunderstood, versions of yourself, perhaps, that you once used to stay connected to people when you were reaching outside of yourself to bring comfort. The urge isn't to speak, it's to repair, to smooth over or to justify or just to make sure the silence doesn't mean, there's something bad, right? We're trying to find comfort. We're trying to find salve, if you will. Often we'll talk to comfort ourselves and try to get others to engage in that game, that scamming of ourselves and of them into thinking that just because they say it, it doesn't make it reality, right? If you've said something and now you're trying to walk it back and you're trying to cover it up, maybe, you try emotionally, to get them in a way to extort from them something where they say, oh yeah, no, it's okay, that kind of stuff. And that's what this is not. Okay. Because when you're comfortable in the silence, you don't worry about those things. And when you're just getting used to this, there's, old habits die hard. They want to try to creep in and do their thing. But you just, I rebuke you, Satan, is how you manage that. But silence doesn't mean anything yet. It just removes the scaffolding, if you will, like outside of a building. It just starts to dismantle all that. And what shows up next, I think, tells you what we're leaning on. Some people, they're going to feel, in a sense, a loneliness because what they're actually feeling is unfiltered awareness. There's no feedback loop. There's no reassurance. There's no audience. You're not trying to get the other person to give you something that you can provide for yourself. It's just you. And that can be scary sometimes for people. And the nervous system learning there's no one coming to fill that space for you, that's the part that no one glamorizes, if you will. It's very interesting because it can be uncomfortable. it was uncomfortable for myself as I started to move into that place, but then realizing, what is it that I need to say? It's not painful, I guess, in a way, but it's just unfamiliar. And we've talked about that before, that there's a need, a desire to be comfortable being uncomfortable. The instinct is to do something with the silence, right? You want to, I don't know, analyze it or label it or, turn it into some insight. Even, to, try to, lament about it. But, the thing about it is that the silence is just the silence. It, in a way, it is what it is, the silence. And it doesn't require anything. It's us with our past that we try to bring comfort by speaking into the silence rather than just observing it. But this episode isn't about doing anything. It's about staying. That's right. It's about staying. So staying while your mind offers nostalgia, maybe, or staying while the doubt starts to tap on your shoulder, in a way that's not healthy for you, or staying while rehearsal, like the idea of rehearsal tries to reopen old doors rather than just be. If you stand in integrity, then there's nothing to rehearse, because no answer will spill forth from you that isn't solidly integrated in you from integrity. You've already created the integrity and the character forged from the accountability and responsibility, decision to choice to responsibility to accountability. And the silence doesn't necessarily, I would say, it doesn't ask you to decide yet. The silence is just an opportunity to notice. If you think about it, silence affords this opportunity to see reality, not create schmutz of emotion. I think what happens a lot of times is people are so uncomfortable with the silence that then they let their mind just take off, and it becomes like the tornado from Wizard of Oz, and it just keeps swirling and swirling and swirling. And why put yourself through all of that? It's easy to just say, I'm going to be comfortable in the silence. And if you can observe for yourself, notice what you reach for when you're no longer explaining yourself. What surfaces? Notice it. Recognize that it might be an old pattern. Then dismiss it and know for yourself that your choices are correct for you, foundationed in the integrity that you have built, that you have forged from responsibility and accountability. This isn't peace, not yet. This is the exposure that comes before the peace. And if it feels a little unsettling, it's not a failure, right? Because we don't care about failure. That's not in our universe, right? There are choices and outcomes, and we reevaluate, right? It's adjustment. It's adjustment to be comfortable with the silence and to notice for self the reality, observe it without the schmutz of emotion, and see the reality even before you say anything in whatever conversation that you're having with yourself. Next week, we're going to talk about what happens when no one is watching anymore, when we realize that there is no audience, and that anytime we think there's an audience, that's when we're getting back into our old patterns of image building and trying to manipulate and control people because we don't care, right? So I would say until then, don't fill the silence. Let it show you what was there all along, but you didn't see it or hear it because you were not silent. You were caught up in your head instead of observing the silence. Okay, so for this week's observation with regards to sitting in silence, whilst working in my office, a staff member had come in and she was lamenting about an issue with this client. And instead of just offering an answer to, bring about the resolution and, off you go, I simply asked, what do you think you want to do? And then I sat in the silence, comfortable, not uncomfortable in any way, not needing to, to fix it. I didn't need to impart wisdom. I wasn't needing to do anything other than listen. What's remarkable is that when you're comfortable in the silence for self, others will speak the reality they filter and provide the answers for themselves. They are not ready for the silence, which would bring forth their solutions. They're caught up, basically, in the noise, and they're unable at this time to figure it out. So by the time she left my office, I had only responded with my question and my final statement. Sounds like you have a good plan. Keep me posted. Let me know if you need help. Simple, easy, without effort, comfort in my silence. More often than not, everyone knows. I've said for a long time, someone has a question, a moment, that whisper in your ear, they already know, but they let all the noise in, and they're not comfortable in the silence, speaking to them, speaking to their organism, and being able to communicate. Okay, hit that like button if you would. Share it with your family and friends. You never know how it might support them in their endeavor. All the fun links are below, and if you're inclined, feel free to subscribe on Buzzsprout. I am on X and Truth Social, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. The link to my newest book, The Christmas Cookie, Stories from the Counter, is listed below. I'd be grateful and honored if you chose to pick up a copy. It's a collection of heartwarming stories that I quietly say unfold the very principles that we talk about here each week. And until next time, stay sharp, stay sovereign, and as always, remember, let each care for self, and all will be cared for. Make it a great week.